Hello, welcome to the course of Organic Production. Today we will speak in this part about agroecology principles and general principles of organic agriculture. Both of them are strictly linked between them. Let's see in the next slides. So this is the title of the lecture, and let's see the content in the further slides. So here we will speak about the house of the living organisms and about the house of the cultivated plants. So we'll speak about ecology and agroecology principles. And then we'll go deeply to the principles of organic agriculture. Step by step, we'll try to analyze why we think that organic agriculture tends to be sustainable. Let's start with the first issue of this lecture. And now, what does it mean, ecology? In fact, its origin or its roots come from Old Greek language. Probably between you students, there are students that are coming from Greek-speaking areas. So they understand very well what does it mean. The first part of the word ecology means house. We say sometimes environment. And the second part comes from the word logos, that means study or science. In fact, the ecology is the branch of biology. It deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical environment. Or another definition, ecology is the science that studies the biota, or living things, living organisms, the environment and their interactions. As you see, it is important to study their interactions between organisms and between them and the environment. And precisely, we can say the ecology is the study of the ecosystems. But what are the ecosystems? Ecosystems describe the web of network of relations among organisms at different levels of organization. There are four main levels of study in ecology that are organisms, population, community, and then ecosystem. And now agroecology. What is it and which are the relation with ecology? In fact, this definition that I'm giving you is done from Miguel Altieri, a famous agroecologist. He is a professor at Berkeley University and I had the luck to be one of his students. So, according to Altieri, agroecology is the science of applying ecological concepts and principles to the design and management of sustainable agroecosystems that are both, attention, productive and natural resource conserving, and that are also culturally sensitive, socially just, and economically viable. You can turn again to this definition and try to understand them word by word. Ecosystems. So I'm going back again to speak about ecosystems. An ecosystem is a complex of biotic constituents consisting of all its living members and its abiotic constituents, including minerals, climate, soil, water, sunlight, and all other non-living elements. Differently, we can explain that ecosystem is a dynamic complex of plant, animal, and microorganism communities and their non-living environment acting as a functional unit. What I wanted to say with this? I wanted to say that ecosystem is very complex and has two important parts in it. From one side, there are biotic constituents, and from the other side, there are elements or constituents of the environment, that is the physical part of the ecosystem. Image, I'm trying to explain simpler what I was saying before. So here we have an ecosystem, and here are all the members in a symbolic way, all the members of ecosystem. So we have the soil, the water, but in the soil we have organisms, and decomposers. In the above ground we have the plants, trees, herbaceous, and so on, and we have primary consumers, secondary consumers, we have sun, energy, it is rainfall or precipitation, and all of them interact between them. Regarding living members of one ecosystem, we can say that they are linked with each other through the food chain, as I was trying to explain in the previous slide. Besides feeding relations, the organisms create other types of interactions between each other. Individual food chains operate within much larger and more complex networks called food webs. So let's speak about food chain. In fact, this is a very simplified food chain because in the nature, interactions and relations between different organisms are more complex. If we want to explain the food chain, for sure we have to start from the producer because they are the producers of organic matter. Then what we have just transmission of or passing of organic matter, and through this the sun energy from one organism to another. So the primary consumer is feed on the grass, and then the secondary consumer on the primary consumer, and so on. And then the decomposers make possible to decompose the organic matter produced from dead animals to go again in the form of nutrients to the grass or to the first producer. Now we see the food chain in the form of pyramid. Why is this pyramid? Because there is equilibrium between producers or plants with herbivores or consumers of first level, and then go to the consumer of second level or primary predator, secondary predator, and so on. The cycle again will be closed with soil decomposers. But this is more complicated. Now here we have a food web because the interaction between organisms are not so simple as shown in a food chain. It was just like for explanation, a simplified one as I said, but here you see a more real life. Here we have another example of a food web, but now in the water environment. Here again, you can understand from this how complicated is the food web in the nature. Now I'm going to see the 4 levels of ecosystems. The 4 levels, as we mentioned even before in the previous slides, there are organism, population, community, and ecosystem. Here we have what we can focus, in the main focus is one plant. It is just to show you or to explain that the study in ecology starts from one individual, from one plant, and then continues to the other levels of organization. But we see here what is more visible. Don't forget that even in this soil, there is a lot of life there with organisms of the soil, microorganisms. In this image, I'm trying exactly to explain the 4 levels of organization within a system. We have each individual of animal. In this case, has or is organized in population, and population is a group of animals of one species in a certain area, in a certain territory, because the same species can have different populations regarding different areas, and they accept the very similar things. If they live for a long time separated, they will have some other characteristics. And if this continues for a long time, time by time it is predicted they can separate even in different species. And we have the community where we have different populations of different species living together in the same place, in the same house, let's say. And then the ecosystem. Let's speak about species diversity. Each community consists of different organisms like plants, animals, microorganisms, fungi, arthropods, etc. They differ from each other from the taxonomy, and this diversity can be regional or local. But what is biodiversity exactly? Biodiversity is the variability among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and the ecological complexes of which they are part. This includes diversity within species, between species, and of different ecosystems. Another community characteristic is the growth form and structure. In each community can be different growth forms like trees, shrubs, herbs. These different growth forms determine or define the structural pattern of a community. Another community characteristic is dominance. What is dominance? All species are not equally important. for each community. A limited number of species have control and dominating influence in the community, defining in this way the nature of the community. What is self-reliance? Each community has a group of autotrophic plants as well as heterotrophic animals. The autotrophic plants gives independence to the community, or they give to the community the independence. Otherwise, if the community has not any autotrophic plants that produce organic matter, then the community none or doesn't exist. The other characteristic of community is relative abundance. So, different population in a community exist in relative proportions, and this idea is called as relative abundance. Trophic structure. Each community has a trophic structure that determines the flow of energy and material from plants to herbivores and to carnivores. This image is to explain you that within one ecosystem there is a flow of energy and flow of nutrients. You can see it, for example, that the energy comes from solar energy here in the system, and the producers fix it through the process of photosynthesis, and their pigments chlorophyll, organic matter will be consumed from consumers to decomposers. It will come back in the environment and the producers will use it again. The same thing does with producers. When they are dead, the producers are decomposed in energy, heat, nutrients that we use from or by other producing photosynthetic organisms. Now let's speak about nutrients flow. As I explained in the previous slide, there is a flow of nutrients. Why it is needed? It is needed for organism growth and their development. There is a cycle or cycling of nutrients within the ecosystems. They are moving from one component to another component of the ecosystem, and during this moving they change the form. And you saw in the previous slide that when the plant or animals are dead, they are decomposed from decomposers and again in the form of nutrients go to the other plants and the cycle restarts. From the other side, nutrients are not moving only locally, but they move from local to the global level. And this movement is called biogeochemical cycles. The most important elements in these biogeochemical cycles are carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. You have the example of nitrogen cycle here. It shows how the nitrogen moves from local to global level. You can study it alone, and if you have questions, you can write me by email or we can discuss in the classes that will be virtual classes. However, one explanation I wanted to give in order to help to understand. Color, you have, look at here, you have all the inputs of nitrogen in the system. Inputs are here. Oh, sorry, it's not perfect circle here. and here. The nitrogen that moves out from the system is crop harvest, volatilization, so on. This, this, and this. Okay. And this color, other color, show the real components of nitrogen that move from input to output. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here we have the cycle of phosphorus. The logic is the same. So our entries, inputs, and there are ways how the phosphorus go out of the system. Here is the cycle of carbon. It seems a little more complicated. Logic to you? From the previous slides, we can conclude that the ecosystem can exist till there is a flow of energy and nutrients. Ecosystems continue to exist thanks to the continuous flow of solar energy, for example, and that is solar energy that sustains it. The natural ecosystems that are ecosystems where humans have not interfered are sustainable, and are sustainable due to four characteristics. Which are these characteristics? First, self-organization. 2. Self-control. 3. Self-maintenance. And 4. Self-evolution. One important characteristic of ecosystem and mechanism of ecosystem is the mechanism of self-regulation. There are interactions between species, and these interactions are very complex. Just to consider that only two species, if they are considered, they have complex relations. Because one species can impact the environment of the other or of the other species. Each species can affect the environment of the other species in one of the three ways. Positively, with plus, negatively, or can have not effect. Based on these three types of effects, in the ecosystem there are different relations between organisms. So here you have a list, and let's start to see which are the forms of interactions between organisms within ecosystem and community. The first is neutralism. If you see here, there are two zeros. This means that organisms do not affect each other. Organism here. This means that if we consider two species, they have obligatory interaction between them and have to impact positively. Commensalism, the first is obligate and the second is a host, but the second doesn't profit or doesn't benefit. Or interaction, in this case, only predator benefits, and we have another organism that is the prey, and the prey has negative effect. Shortly, it is eaten. Parasitation is again the same nature, but In this case, we have not predator, but we have a parasite which benefits in the cost of the host, and the host have negative effect, which is parasitation. For example, the plants that live to the other plants and they don't produce their self. Competition is in the cases when the both organisms compete to each other and affect each other negatively. Amensalism is when the first is affected negatively, but the second is not affected at all. Amensalism see as a relation or as a type of interaction between two organisms, in fact, is more rare than the other interactions. At this point, we finish this part of the lecture, so till the next time, see you and bye-bye.